Yamata no Orochi, often regarded as the most powerful yokai in Japanese mythology, is one of the most well-known dragon-like creatures. But did you know, compared to such terrifying monsters, the Japanese perception of dragons is actually closer to guardian deities rather than destructive beings? In Japanese myths and legends, many dragons are seen as divine entities that govern nature and even protect Buddhist teachings. For example, Ryujin, the dragon god who rules the ocean and tides. Kuzu, the nine-headed dragon of Lake Ashi who was later transformed into a deity. And the Hachi-dai Ryo, the 8 great dragon kings from Buddhist tradition who protect the Dharma. These dragons are not simply monsters, but beings that coexist with nature and even protect humanity. In today's video, we will explore the origins of Japanese dragon legends and how they have influenced Japan's culture and beliefs. I'm Mr. Yao, and welcome to the Leyenda Yokai channel. Here, I explore famous yokai and urban legends. If you're into these topics, be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out on future videos. Japan's connection with dragons actually goes back much earlier than we might imagine. At the Ike-Garmi Sone archaeological site in Izumi City, Osaka, a Yayoi period long-necked pottery vessel was discovered. Some researchers interpret its decorative patterns as resembling a dragon. This artifact may reflect early contact with continental beliefs in water or rain deities, and is considered one of the earliest dragon-like images found in Japan. In other words, more than 2,000 years ago, when Japan was still in the Yayoi period, roughly around the same time as China's Qin dynasty, the image of the dragon had already crossed the sea into Japan. But interestingly, at that time, the Japanese did not really know what a dragon was. The dragon depicted on the pottery looks somewhat crude, as if it was drawn based on descriptions and imagination. This actually suggests that dragons were not native to Japan, but rather a concept introduced from the mainland. In fact, the earliest origins of dragons can be traced back to China. After thousands of years of development and cultural evolution, they gradually formed the image of the Eastern dragon that we are familiar with today. As for the origins and development of Chinese dragons, I've already made a dedicated video on that topic. If you're interested, you can find it in the description below or on my channel. So, after the image of a dragon was introduced into Japan, how was it first recorded in writing? To answer that, we have to look at Japan's oldest historical text, the Nihon Shoki. This book was completed in the year 720, around the same time as China's Tang dynasty. It is in this text that the word dragon first appears in Japan's historical records. But interestingly, the image of the dragon in the Nihon Shoki is not consistent. In the main text, it is written as a dragon, but in another version of the same story, the creature is described as a yahirawani, which refers to a giant crocodile or shark. In other versions, it is depicted as a serpent crawling along the ground. Around 1,300 years ago, the Japanese did not yet have a clear or unified idea of what a dragon actually was. Depending on the storyteller, it could be a dragon, a crocodile, or even a giant snake. This ambiguity later paved the way for the fusion between imported dragon imagery and native serpent deities in Japan. The Nihon Shoki also contains another fascinating account. It tells of a dragon deity who used sacred tools to create Oyashima, which refers to the Japanese archipelago. Japan's first emperor, Emperor Jimmu, is said to be a descendant of this dragon deity. In other words, from the perspective of official historical records, the imperial bloodline has been connected to dragons from the very beginning. There is also another theory. Some scholars believe that the Yayoi people, who were among the earliest inhabitants of Japan, came from the Jiangnan region of China, where a group known as the Sea People worshipped dragon and serpent deities. When they crossed the sea to Japan, they brought these beliefs with them. This idea is reflected in mythology, where Princess Tomoyori Hime of the Sea is said to have married a human prince and given birth to Emperor Jimmu. You may notice that this points to the same conclusion as the Nihon Shoki. The bloodline of the emperor is closely tied to dragons. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Sea of Japan, in the region once known as Koshi, which corresponds to today's Hokuriku area, people worshipped a massive creature known as Yamata no Orochi. Its form combines both serpent and dragon-like features, becoming another important origin within Japanese mythology. Even the imperial regalia, the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, is said to have been discovered from within the body of Yamata no Orochi, and was therefore regarded by later generations as a dragon sword. The reason why dragons in Japan are often portrayed as guardians of the sea, lakes, and rivers is closely tied to the country's unique geography. Japan is an island nation surrounded by the ocean, with thousands of islands scattered between the Pacific Ocean and the Sea of Japan. The sea is not only a source of life, but also a gateway to the outside world. In such an environment, people both feared and relied on the power of water. As a result, dragons were naturally given the role of protecting these waters, becoming deities that safeguard and watch over humanity. Based on this belief, many water-related dragon deities began to appear in Japanese mythology. For example, Ryujin, the dragon god who rules the ocean and tides, said to live in the underwater palace of Ryugujo and worshipped by those who depend on the sea. Another is Kuzuryu, the nine-headed dragon of Lake Ashi, once feared but later transformed into a guardian deity of the lake and its people. Even today, the Kuzuryu Shrine in Hakone remains a place where people pray for love and prosperity. There is also the Hachidai Ryuyo, the 8 great dragon kings from Buddhist tradition. Originally serpent deities known as Naga in Indian mythology, they were brought to Japan with Buddhism and became protectors of the Dharma. You'll notice that, unlike Western dragons, Japanese dragons are rarely portrayed as evil. Instead, they are more like deities that coexist with nature and protect humanity. This shows that dragons take on very different forms across cultures. Yet no matter where they appear, their significance remains profound. In China, dragons are seen as symbols of good fortune. In Japan, they are guardians. But in the West, they take on a very different image. The same mythical creature evolves into completely different forms across cultures. And that in itself is fascinating. So after exploring Eastern and Japanese dragons, what do Western dragons look like? If you enjoy my channel, please help by hitting the subscribe button and turning on the notification bell so you won't miss my upcoming videos. Thank you for watching until the end, and I'll see you next time.